The Doraxian Empire had conquered 372 worlds. They were the undisputed masters of their galactic arm, feared by all species who encountered them. The Doraxians themselves were imposing creatures, tall, muscular beings, with scaled skin that could withstand most weapons, and 4 powerful arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their society was built on conquest, discipline, and endless expansion. Their warships were massive, brutal machines that inspired terror across the stars. Their philosophy was simple: fight, conquer, consume, repeat. The strong dominate the weak. This was the natural order of the universe. Then, they found Earth. At first, the Doraxian High Command was unimpressed by the small blue planet. Their scans showed a technologically limited species that had barely begun exploring their own solar system. The humans had only primitive space, stations orbiting their world, a small base on their moon, and a handful of research outposts on the neighboring red planet. Their weapons were basic: chemical explosives, simple projectiles, and limited energy technology. Their defenses were almost non-existent. By all measurements used by the Doraxian military, Earth should have been a 2-day conquest at most. Fleet Commander Xerex stood on the bridge of the inevitable dominance, the flagship of the invasion force. His scales gleamed under the ship's lights as he studied the holographic display of Earth. 300 warships under his command had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Victory was a certainty. The only question was how quickly the humans would surrender once they realized resistance was futile. "Begin standard conquest protocol," he ordered. "Send scout ships to assess their defenses and identify key military targets." The scout ships returned 6 hours later with puzzling reports. "Commander," said First Officer Drax, "the scouts have detected something unusual about the humans." Xerex's upper right arm made a dismissive gesture. What could possibly be unusual about yet another primitive species about to be conquered? Drax hesitated before responding. "They appear to be playing, sir." Xerex's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "Playing? Explain." Drax activated a larger display showing images captured by the scout ships. The display showed humans engaged in various activities across the planet. Some pushed small objects across patterned boards. Others threw or kicked balls of different sizes. Some moved their bodies rhythmically to sound waves. Others manipulated small electronic devices, their faces showing intense concentration, followed by expressions of triumph or disappointment. Still others strapped themselves to boards and slid down mountains covered in frozen water. "What is the strategic purpose of these activities?" Xerex demanded. "That's what's strange, Commander," Drax replied. "They appear to have no strategic purpose. According to our analysis, humans spend approximately 22% of their waking time engaged in these purposeless activities. They call it play or games or sports or hobbies. Sometimes they do these activities alone, sometimes in small groups, and sometimes large numbers gather to watch others perform these actions." Xerex studied the images with growing confusion. "Are they training for combat?" Drax shook his head. "No, Commander. While some activities might improve physical conditioning, most appear to be completely unrelated to survival skills or military training. They seem to do these things for enjoyment." The bridge fell silent. The concept was alien to the Doraxians. In their culture, every action had a purpose: to strengthen the body, to improve fighting skills, to increase knowledge that could be used for conquest, or to serve the Empire. The idea of expending energy on purposeless activities was incomprehensible. "Show me more," Xerex ordered. The display shifted to new images: humans sitting motionless for hours, moving small carved objects on checkered boards. Humans manipulating pieces of paper with markings on them. Humans assembling tiny replicas of buildings or vehicles or creatures. Humans striking small white balls with metal sticks, then walking long distances to strike them again. "This is madness," said Xerex. "How has this species survived long enough to develop space travel? They waste their time and resources on nothing." Military strategist Krell, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. Commander, I believe we should be cautious. This behavior is unusual, yes, but it may indicate something we don't understand about human psychology. Zarex made a sound of derision. What's to understand? They're weak, they waste their energy, they will fall easily to our might. Krell's scales flickered with concern, a Doraxian expression of disagreement. With respect, Commander, anything odd, this different from our understanding merits further study before we attack. After some deliberation, Zarex agreed to send infiltration units to the surface. Unlike the massive four-armed Doraxians, their infiltration units were small, agile, robots designed to observe without detection. They were dispatched to various locations around the planet, programmed to gather more information about these strange games that humans seemed so obsessed with. "We will delay the invasion by one planetary rotation," Zarex declared. "But no longer. The Empire awaits another conquest." The infiltration units returned with even more baffling information. Humans didn't just play these games in their leisure time, they had built entire industries around them. They created complex rule systems. They formed teams and leagues. They devoted enormous resources to constructing specialized arenas where these purposeless activities could be performed. Most perplexing of all, humans reacted to these games with intense emotional investment, celebrating victories and mourning defeats in activities that provided no survival advantage whatsoever. "There's more, Commander," Drax reported. "Humans also engage in something they call fiction. They create elaborate false narratives, stories that never happened about people who don't exist. They spend hours consuming these falsehoods through various media, books, visual displays, audio recordings." Zarex's confusion was turning to irritation. "To what end? What military advantage do false stories provide?" Drax had no answer. In Doraxian culture, the only stories told were historical accounts of great conquests or instructional tales for young warriors. The concept of creating stories purely for entertainment was as foreign as the concept of playing games. Military. Strategist Krell had been analyzing all the data collected by the infiltration units. "Commander," he said carefully, "I believe these behaviors may be connected to something we've observed in other species, but never to this extent. The humans call it creativity." Zarex had heard the term before. Some conquered species exhibited limited forms of creativity, the ability to find new solutions to problems or to adapt to changing circumstances. But it was always directed toward practical ends: survival, warfare, resource acquisition. "This is different," Krell continued. "Human creativity extends beyond practical applications. They create not just to solve problems, but for the sake of creation itself. Their games are not just training exercises, but systems designed to challenge their minds in novel ways. Their stories are not just educational tools, but explorations of possibilities that don't exist." Zarex struggled to grasp the concept. In the Doraxian mind, everything had to serve a purpose, and that purpose was ultimately the expansion and strengthening of the Empire. "How does this affect our conquest strategy?" Zarex finally asked. Krell's response was unexpected. "I recommend caution, Commander. This unpredictable creativity may make humans react in ways we cannot anticipate. Our conquest models are based on species that behave according to logical patterns, defend vital resources, protect population centers, prioritize survival. Humans might not follow these patterns." Zarex dismissed the concern. "They are still primitives with primitive weapons. Begin the invasion." The first wave of Doraxian ships entered Earth's atmosphere over major population centers. Their strategy was standard: show overwhelming force, destroy key military installations, demand surrender. But from the very beginning, something was wrong. The humans did not respond according to any known pattern. Some military bases were abandoned before the Doraxians arrived. Other locations that appeared to be civilian suddenly revealed hidden defenses. The invasion forces found themselves facing not just military personnel, but civilians using improvised weapons and tactics. "What is happening?" Zarex demanded, as reports of unexpected resistance came in from all fronts. "Their military response makes no sense. They're not defending in standard formations. They're not prioritizing strategic locations. Krell studied the incoming data with growing alarm. They're playing with us, Commander. They're treating this invasion like one of their games. They're using strategies from their games of chess and Go and something called video games. They're adapting fictional scenarios from their entertainment to real combat. The second day of the invasion brought more confusion. Humans had begun using bizarre countermeasures never seen in any previous conquest. They deployed autonomous ground vehicles that had clearly been civilian machines hastily converted to military use. They reconfigured commercial communication networks to disrupt Doraxian coordination. In one city, they had somehow manipulated the water supply system to trap a Doraxian ground force in quickly hardening concrete. None of these tactics were in any standard military doctrine. "How are they doing this?" Zarex raged as another battle group reported unexpected resistance. Krell's analysis was disturbing. The humans are collaborating in ways we've never seen. They're sharing ideas, improvising solutions, combining concepts from their various games and stories to create new tactics on the fly. They're not following any rulebook because they're writing it as they go. Zarex couldn't accept this explanation. They're primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their weapons are toys compared to our armaments. Technology isn't everything, Krell replied quietly. We've always relied on superior technology and predictable enemy responses. The humans are using creativity to offset our technological advantage. They're turning everyday objects into weapons. They're using their environment in ways we never anticipated. They're thinking outside of established military doctrine because they've spent their entire lives training to think outside established patterns through their games and fiction. A particularly troubling report came from a major human city called Tokyo. A Doraxian force had been effectively neutralized not by the human military, but by civilians using tactics apparently inspired by something called anime and manga. Fictional combat scenarios that, while physically impossible, had given the humans ideas for unconventional approaches. Similar reports came from other regions. Tactics inspired by Western movies in North America, by Bollywood films in India, by Kung Fu cinema in China. On the third day of the invasion, Zarex was forced to call an emergency meeting of his command staff. What had been planned as a 2-day conquest was now looking like a prolonged campaign with uncertain outcomes. We need to understand this human creativity better, he finally admitted. We need to study their games, their stories, their entertainment. We need to predict how they might use these things against us. But Krell's response was nodding. The very nature of human creativity makes that's its strength and our weakness. Division began a crash analysis of human entertainment and games, trying to anticipate what new tactics the humans might deploy. But the sheer volume and variety was overwhelming. Humans had created millions of different games with different rule sets. They had told countless stories across various media, many involving scenarios of aliens invading and being defeated despite superior technology. The Doraxians found themselves in the unprecedented position of trying to analyze fiction to predict real-world military responses. By the 5th day, the invasion had stalled completely. Doraxian forces were not being defeated outright. Their technology was still superior, but they were faced with constant, unexpected challenges that prevented them from securing any territory. More concerning to Zarex was that human responses were evolving rapidly. Tactics that worked for the Doraxians on the first day were ineffective by the third, as humans shared information globally and developed counters. The humans were learning, adapting, and creating new solutions faster than the Doraxians could respond. "We have never encountered anything like this," Zarex admitted in his report to the Doraxian High Command. "The humans are using something they call imagination. The ability to conceive of things that don't exist and then bring them into existence. Their games and fiction have trained them to think in ways that our warriors cannot. They see possibilities where we see only established patterns. They create solutions that follow no established doctrine. They collaborate in chaotic but effective ways." The High Command's response was immediate and unexpected. "Withdraw all forces from the human planet. Do not destroy. Do not engage further. Return to Imperial space immediately." Zarex was stunned. The Doraxian Empire had never retreated from a conquest in its 1,000-year history. But the explanation that followed made a disturbing kind of sense. This human creativity is dangerous. It is unpredictable. It cannot be conquered by conventional means. More concerning, it may be contagious. Extended exposure to human thought patterns might infect our forces with this chaos. As the Doraxian fleet prepared to depart Earth's solar system, Zarex stood, alone on the observation deck of the inevitable dominance. He watched the small blue planet recede on the view screen, still trying to comprehend what had happened. For the first time in his long military career, he had encountered something that could not be defeated through superior strength, technology, or discipline. The humans had prevailed, not through greater force, but through greater imagination. Military strategist Krell joined him on the deck. "You know what troubles me most, Commander," he said quietly. "The humans were playing." Zarex turned to face him. "Explain." Krell gestured toward the distant Earth. "They treated our invasion as another game. They applied the thinking they use in their entertainment to real warfare, and they enjoyed it. I monitored their communication networks. They were sharing ideas, celebrating successful tactics, treating the whole thing as a global collaborative challenge. They weren't just fighting us, they were playing with us." Zarex considered this disturbing analysis, "And we cannot play this game because we do not understand it." Krell nodded slowly. "The Doraxian mind is trained for order, for discipline, for following established patterns. The human mind is trained for chaos, for creativity, for breaking patterns. In 372 conquests, we have never encountered a species that valued imagination over efficiency, play over purpose, creativity over discipline. Perhaps that is why we never encountered one before. Perhaps such species are rare because those qualities don't aid survival on most worlds. But they aided survival against us," Zarex noted. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Sol system behind, he made a final entry in the official record. "Earth is to be designated as a Class X prohibited world. No Doraxian ships are to approach within 10 light years of this system. The humans possess a weapon more dangerous than any technology, the ability to imagine possibilities that don't exist and then bring them into existence. This creativity makes them unpredictable, adaptable, and unconquerable by conventional means. They defeated the Empire not through superior force but through superior play. In the decades that followed, the Doraxian Empire conducted extensive studies of human creativity from a safe distance. They intercepted human broadcasts, analyzed their entertainment, studied their games. Slowly, cautiously, some aspects of human thinking began to influence Doraxian culture. Young Doraxians began to experiment with games of strategy that valued creative thinking over memorized tactics. Military academies introduced exercises based on unpredictable scenarios rather than established doctrine. Some particularly radical thinkers even suggested that fiction might have value as a way to explore possible futures. The Empire continued to conquer worlds. Species that thought along predictable lines still fell easily to Doraxian might. But the High Command never again attempted to invade Earth. The small blue planet remained a forbidden zone, a place where beings had discovered a power greater than any weapon, the power to play, to imagine, to create without purpose beyond the joy of creation itself. A place where warfare could be treated as a game, and games had taught the skills of warfare. A place where the seemingly purposeless activity of play had defeated the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And on Earth, humans continued their games, told their stories, created their art, never knowing how close they had come to conquest, or how their creativity had saved them. They played not to survive, but for the simple joy of playing. And in doing so, they had discovered a power that even they didn't fully understand. A power that made them uniquely dangerous in a universe of predictable patterns. The power to think beyond what exists. The power to create new rules rather than follow established ones. The power to play.